Ready. Play.
Well, hello there and welcome to Talking Tennis. And we are still doing our celebration of the best matches of 2025, men's and women's. And we come to one of our top three of the sort of women's matches of the year. And it's great that I'm reuniting with you, Vanch, because I don't know where officially this is going to be in the ranking in terms of the Talking Tennis hive mind. But I know what you and I both think. And for us, this is the match of the year, right?
Yeah, for me, just looking back at all the matches that took place this year, for me, this is the one that stands out in terms of matches of the year. That's why I have it at the top. Just so many unbelievable momentum swing storylines, incredible third set. A lot of the Keys story that we'll get to later, and also from an ego perspective, was very fascinating viewing.
Yeah, very fascinating. And I think we talked at length about this in our kind of extra long 2-hour live stream where we whittled down all the matches of the year, and we panicked when we realized we had a top 25 and not a top three. I guess let's get into it because the year peaked early. The Australian Open was epic in so many ways, and there were so many good matches. And let's talk about Keys first because we've mentioned her and her kind of run in to this match because she had contributed to the epicness of the tournament herself, right, Vanch?
Oh, by far, yeah. I mean, she was just such an incredible feature as far as, if you want to say the Australian Open was the best tournament, it was really because of Madison Keys and all of her amazing run, starting from the second round all the way through to the semifinals, which we're about to talk about. There were just so many compelling matches that all featured her, and she had also been coming in with a title the week before, and she had been playing with a new racket. There was a lot kind of freedom that she was playing with, but at the same time, finding herself in really tight situations and coming up with really clutch shots over and over and over again. And it was just a matter of seeing how long can she actually last. Is this going to be something sustainable against the very top two? And it proved to be at the very end, and it was a super dream come true for her because obviously we know she'd been knocking on the door. This is not a player who is just a random number 19 in the world like she was at the time. I mean, she had been to the US Open final in 2017, losing out to her friend and compatriot Sloane Stephens, but wasn't really able to give herself a good account in that match because of nerves and also was dealing with an injury. And then, of course, you have the moment in the 2023 US Open where she's playing Aryna Sabalenka and she's dominating her for the first two sets up 6-0, 5-3. And then eventually loses a heartbreaker 7-6 in the third. And that was a very emotional loss that took a long time for her to get through. But the sense was it's that she is a player who could catch fire and win a major. That was the feeling that we've always had about Keys. Like, we know at her very best, she can take out anyone because she can go toe to toe with you from the baseline in terms of power and velocity of shot. And her serve is so huge. She has so many weapons, and it just made a match like this so compelling because you have Iga on the other hand, who is so known for winning so many tight matches and being so clutch. And at this point was playing some unbelievable tennis in the first 5 rounds. But I mean, sticking to Keys, I think it started with the win against Rusa, right, in the second round, where she ends up winning 7-5 in the third. And that was one of those matches she could have easily lost because Rusa won the second set very handily, had break points to go up a break in the third. There were so many tight exchanges, tight moments in that match. And then the wins over Collins and Rybakina in 3, and the wins over, and even Svitolina in 3. I mean, it was such a tough road even to get there.
It really was. And I remember kind of thinking about this run, like how much gas does Madison Keys still have in the tank? Because she hadn't just, come through some really tough matches in the main draw. Because, I'm glad you mentioned Rybakina as well. Like, that was a big story because, Rybakina was seen as one of the title contenders, and this might be her kind of hitting the ground running, coming back. And the Svitolina match was really tense and really tight in its own way. Another 3-set battle. Svitolina does not give easy wins away that often, especially when she's kind of coming into form. And the first half of the year, Svitolina was one of the players to watch. But also, Madison Keys had come off 2 really good weeks. Like, she got to the quarterfinals in Auckland and lost to Clara Towson after being up in that match. And then she toughs her way to an Adelaide title, beating Jessica Pegula in the final. And it's like, surely after all those matches, particularly in Adelaide, she was going to sort of run a gas eventually. Surely Ruth was going to get her. Surely Rebecca was going to get her. Surely Svitolina would get her. Okay, surely against a really informed Iga Świątek, she wasn't going to have enough. And yeah, she was just on fire throughout the draw up to this point. And that's, you know, that's what made this so good when we get into the match. Like, Iga Świątek against any player who's on fire, when she's playing well, that's going to be a recipe for a great match. But I want to go back onto Keys for a moment before talking about Iga. And you mentioned about kind of Keys in the past and previous experiences, and you know, that was a tough loss to Arena. I don't think she would have missed out on a major. I think that year was Coco's year at the US Open, and I think that would have been tough for Keys to win it. But you were saying that, like, we always thought if Keys catches fire, she'll win a major at the right time. Was it the case? Was that purely the case in terms of the form coming into here, or was it that there was something different about her?
A little bit of both. I mean, the thing about the form, though, is that it can go either way, because we've seen sometimes players winning a 500 the week before, and maybe they run out of gas early, or maybe, you know, a lot of times they don't produce the wins like she was back to back to back to back. So I think there was a component of her, obviously mentally, being able to let go of the idea that I may never win one. Like she talked about after she won the title, she had to be okay and internally happy with herself, that if I finish my career without winning a major, that is totally fine because I've had a great career. Like, so she was able to compartmentalize her happiness from the results and separate the two things, which is really difficult to do at her age. And given how much hype she had growing up, and just how many times she was being compared to Serena and compared to so many other players, it's like, you know, her career was being viewed as a disappointment by many people, when in reality she had achieved a lot of great things. She had won Cincinnati, she had been top 10 before, she had won 10 other titles, she had constantly been in the hunt, or like she'd put herself in positions to win majors, even if she was ultimately didn't get closer than she did in 2017. She was still a player that, you know, it's like, to do it the way she was able to do it, by beating the gauntlet of players that she did, there was something that had to take place mentally. And now, of course, there are a few technical things. I mean, her serve was just on fire the whole 2 weeks, and that's such an important weapon for her if she's ever going to win one. And, you know, I think the freedom that she was playing with a new racket, it just gave her a bigger extra sweet spot on a lot of shots that maybe previously she didn't have the guts to quite go for in the big moments, or when she did, she would often not back herself. And instead of doing it the same way this time, I feel like she just went in and just had so much clarity. And I think it was also her coaching. You know, Bjorn Fratangelo did like an amazing job of keeping her positive throughout the whole 2 weeks. And there were so many times where, like, that dynamic between the two of them was working really, really well, in terms of she would go up to him for advice in really crucial moments, and he'd just keep it very simple. You know, he would just not overload her with information. He'd just tell her a very simple thing, those small details that matter in matches. And I saw that in the Svitolina match, at times in the Świątek match. You know, like, Świątek is one of the best front runners. So to come back from a set down against her in the semifinals of a major where she has so much more experience, even though she's a lot younger, like, all those things, yeah, there was a switch that happened for her mentally. And yeah, I mean, boy, was it a crazy story to watch, and it made everyone pretty happy because she's so well liked by a lot of players.
Oh yeah, and by a lot of fans as well. Like, I've always had a soft spot for Madison Keys. I know that she's really popular in the locker room, but just it's very well known that she's a nice person. And so, like, I was one of those people who's wanting nice things for her. I think we'll kind of delve back. We'll probably end up talking a lot more about the bigger picture of Madison Keys' career and the impact of all that in the final review. So when, if you're not aware, one of the other matches of the year is Madison Keys' final against Aryna Sabalenka at the Australian Open. So, which kind of spoils the outcome of this. If you didn't know how this one went, sorry. But Vanch kind of gave it away earlier. So thinking about kind of, you know, coaching relationships, that segues nicely to where Iga Świątek was at coming into this match. World number 2 had lost the world number 1 ranking to Aryna Sabalenka at the back end of 2024. Got herself a new coach, Wim Fissette, famously coach of many multiple Grand Slam champions on the women's side, Kim Clijsters, Naomi Osaka, Angie Kerber. And Iga was looking for the next step to keep her at the top of the game. And coming into this match, like she'd been to the United Cup final with Poland. She'd lost her match to Coco Gauff in that, which was unfortunate, but Coco was in real form. And then it looked like this Iga 2.0 that Wim and her were developing might be coming quite quickly because she had adapted really well to the super fast conditions of Australia. She looked pretty comfortable. She crushed her way through the draw, including against Emma Navarro in the quarterfinals, which was just a beatdown. And yeah, there's a reason why it felt like it was kind of unstoppable. So yeah, what were your thoughts on Iga and how she was looking, where she was at coming into this match?
Yeah, I felt like she was coming on pretty strong. I mean, I know she lost that final to Coco, but she had really good wins that United Cup against the likes of Bolter, who played like her best match of the year, basically against her, and then Muchova and Rybakina. And the Rybakina win, I remember being pretty big because she hadn't beaten Rybakina on a fast hard court up until that point. And so tactically, it was a really good performance from her. And the final against Coco didn't go the way she wanted to, but she was still hitting really well, playing, moving exceptionally well. The conditions in Australia, she seemed to adapt to them very quickly. Like you said, dropped very few games throughout the first 5 rounds. The match against Lise and even Raducanu, and then Raducanu was round 3, I believe, something like that. And then and then the 4th round, the quarterfinal against Navarro. That's where you really saw her look like at that point I started to think like, oh, she could win this tournament because she'd look the best to me out of all the players that were playing up until that point. And I just felt like if she gets to the final in this kind of a form, I'd probably backed her more than the other players. So I thought like, okay, this partnership thing seems to be working well, and it seems like this could be her tournament, even though of course Aryna was going for 3 in a row and she would have been tough to beat in the finals regardless. But Świątek, everything was looking great the first 5 rounds, and you just thought, given her history against Keys, and up until that point she had won most of their matches except for a match in Cincinnati in 2022, the tournament that Keys plays really well in. Aside from that, it's a matchup that you think Iga has the ability to withstand, even with Keys playing as well as she did. So that ultimately made everything, it added a lot more context, I guess.
Yeah, and then what we ended up with was one player who was hitting the kind of form that we know she can have in Iga Świątek, of looking really strong, looking like a title favourite at a tournament, as we're very used to seeing, and Madison Keys in the form of her life. And that gave us a blockbuster, which we will get into, because right away we realised Iga might be having her biggest challenge of the tournament when she got broken pretty much immediately in the first game of this. And then the first 4 games of this match were breaks. So Maddie broke Iga broke back, Maddie broke again, Iga broke back, and then finally held for 3-2. But it didn't feel like a messy service games in terms of, they were both fighting their serve. Like, they were both just going after their returns. They were both, and it just felt like a real battle from the off. They were ready to go toe to toe with each other. And the way they were kind of celebrating, like hitting winners from like point 1, you knew that this was going to be a battle.
Yeah, the intensity with which they both came out with was quite something to behold. I mean, the first 4 games, they were just crushing each other's second serve returns and just getting on top of the rally early and not allowing the other to work the point at all. And that was especially important for Keys because, with Iga's athleticism and her amazing movement, you want to get on her really quickly, because otherwise she's going to be so good at constructing points and moving you around side to side. She spreads the court so well, better than most players I've ever seen, and she's so good at controlling that pace. So that was quite something, because they were both, like, Madison was matching Iga's intensity right from the first 4 games. So you thought, okay, this is going to be quite a battle, unless Iga. But when Iga held for 3-2, after that you did start to feel like, okay, she's got a lot more solidity here. Like, she's able to do this, play the same kind of brand of tennis, but with a little more margin. and she was able to stretch her lead because then she broke, I believe, at love or 15, and she held for 5-2, and then even had a set point at 5-2 to take the first set 6-2. So it was looking like all of a sudden like all that drama and the kind of break fest that we saw in the first 4 games. Yeah, like if Iga has the momentum and goes up and wins the first set 6-2, it's like a very different match.
Yeah, I was thinking watching that back, like, good grief, the first set and the third set were actually very similar flow-wise, especially in terms of closeness and in terms of opportunities that, players had, and Iga being able to compete with a bit more margin, as you said. Like, yeah, she took control, and it did look like for that middle part of that first set that she was going to take the lead in that match. I mean, that set point that she had to win 6-2, that was on Keys' serve.
Yeah.
Do you remember how Keys saved that?
Yeah, I believe they got into an exchange and they were going backhand to backhand, which is a pattern that, if you're Iga, you like that pattern. Not only because she has one of the best backhands on the tour, but because Madison takes on a lot more risk, and it's going to be hard for Madison to change directions and go down the line over the higher part of the net if Iga keeps hitting the backhand as strong as she was that whole tournament, especially. So Iga at this point, decides to go for a backhand down the line. It wasn't a terrible idea because, she was getting good depth off of her cross-court trades, but she missed this backhand by a smidge, and she didn't. She probably went too close to the line here, and Keys manages to hold after that, and 2 really good serves, holds for 3-5. So that was a huge game because, I mean, if Iga makes that backhand down the line or just keeps trading cross-court, maybe she gets a miss from Keys. Maybe then she's serving first in the second set and has that 6-2 lead.
But she didn't, and that seems to galvanize Keys because suddenly we're back to how things were in the start of the set, and Keys breaks back. I mean, yeah, I feel like that was Keys kind of forcing the issue rather than Iga letting it go. And then it felt like the set could be anybody's, especially when she leveled for 5-5.
Oh, yeah, definitely. At this point, the complexion of the match had totally changed, and it was back to being a lot more even. And yeah, I mean, and also what Keys was doing really well from the 2-5 to 5-ball game is she was hitting really good depth just straight down the middle of the court and just taking away all of Iga's angles and options. And she had enough patience to where she was hitting 2 or 3 shots pretty hard, deep, heavy down the middle, and then waiting for the right ball to pounce on. And it just felt like she was able to put Iga under a lot more pressure that way rather than trying to go for winners outright. And so something clicked in terms of her. Like, I think that 5-2 save was massive because, yeah, I mean, then she held for 5-all. She kept, then Iga does hold. She did a really good job holding for 6-5, and then now the pressure was back on Keys to either force a tiebreak or, drop serve, which.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, there was a possibility. I mean, like, even watching this match back and knowing how it went, like, there was a possibility that, like even look at that, Świątek could have been rocking at that point from being, knocked back and, like, having had, by Keys's comeback. And she does well to hold for 6-5, steady the ship, compose herself, ready to go again to break Maddie for the set. Because, like you, I thought it was going tie break that set. Like, that set did look like it was going that way. And so for Świątek to then go and find that level to break again, get the set, which, she did lead. I don't necessarily know if deserved more than Keys, but I think it was pretty even. That was how good that set was. But yeah, I thought she did a good job to basically switch the momentum back in her favor, at least enough to win that set.
Yeah, and I mean, Keys serving 5-6, 30 love, 30-15. It just felt like at that point I thought a tiebreak was coming. So it was a really good effort from Iga to, just get a lot of balls back, hit pretty deep. Her ball control in this game was really good. She didn't miss a lot. She forced Keys into coming up with really, low percentage shots, and it just seemed to work. And at this point, you're thinking, okay, Iga's up a set, and she's been in this position many times, and she doesn't lose matches like this very often at this stage of the tournament from a set up. So I was liking Iga's chances, but I felt like the match would still be pretty competitive, and like maybe the break would help reset things. And boy, the way the second set unfolded, though, I don't think I saw that coming. So we can talk about that. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's time to move on to the second set. So Iga does not make the most of momentum. She gets broken early by Keys. I think that second set was interesting because the first few games of it did still feel like the first set. It still felt like pretty competitive, pretty intense. There was, I get pretty intense. And then I think Maddie really hit a swipe. I also think Iga kind of went off the boil a little bit, which is something that actually we do see from her throughout the rest of the year in certain sets and certain matches. You know, at points like that, some good weeks, some bad weeks, but I can think of a number of other matches where that would have happened. But luckily for her, she wasn't a set down, she was a set up. So she could stay in the match. But yeah, unfortunately, that kind of blip meant that suddenly we're at 5-0, 5-love, and Keys serving for the bagel. So that was, it did feel like, oh, this is a weird shift in the match, and it feels a bit more, this set feels a little bit more one way. We'll talk about the end of the set in a minute, because I think that end of set was critical for how the rest of the match panned out. But what was your thoughts on that kind of 5-game stretch? Do you see it?
Yeah, I also remember Iga took a bathroom break after winning that set, which at that time I didn't really think much of it. I thought like, okay, she's, she does this. She it was a long set. You got to reset, gather your thoughts, everything, and then come back. But looking back, like I think she did not play a really good game in the first game, and her serving, like she wasn't making first serves anymore. She was going for winners earlier in points, and the forehand got a lot more erratic. And I just feel like whereas Keys like maintained her level from 2-5 all the way through, and it was Iga's level dripping more so for me. And like the first 2 or 3 games, she just completely lost her rhythm on the serve, and even on the ground strokes, it just felt like she was always playing from behind. Like gets broken 3 times, and none of these games were even that close. Like she got broken at 30 or 15. Like there were no deuce games in the second set at all. So like 7 games, none of them went to deuce. And so this was the lull in the match where I feel like one player dropped her level the most, and this was like the first 5 games from Iga, which at that time it did come as a bit of a surprise. But like you said, we saw it a lot later on in the year. I mean, in between the Australian Open and Roland Garros a few times, like against Coco in Madrid, against some, like she came back from love 6 down in Madrid against Keys, and ends up winning it. But like even later in the year, after the US Open, we saw some sets like this from Iga as well, where she just got very impatient and just kept kind of trying to force the issue a bit too much, rather than playing the kind of high margin game she was playing and relying on her athleticism in the first set. So that little dip just meant the second set went really quickly. I mean, but like you said, the last 2 games were extremely important, because Keys serving at 5-love for a 6-love set doesn't hold and actually gets broken there. And that's when Iga manages to salvage a little bit of it back.
Yeah, she does. And again, watching this back, that's where I feel like Iga wrestles the momentum. And that's the key to making the third set what it was, for her to be competitive, to kind of get back in the match. Yeah, I mean, at this point, like we could talk about Iga's season and whatnot, but I thought that was a good moment to to bring up a comeback, opportunity to get another game on the board, make it 6-2 maybe, when she was serving next, I believe. Yeah, because she broke back. Yeah, she would have been 5-2. Yeah, 5-2, and then like put pressure on Keys to see if she could serve it out. But yeah, and then I know you said there wasn't a deuce game in that set. Iga didn't hold serve in the second set because she still got broken again, and Keys takes the set again. I don't think that, even though the game didn't go to deuce, it still felt kind of in the balance. I think it was a 30 game.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, she was playing better. Like she did those last 2 games. I did feel like there was a certain switch, or the focus was better, the shot selection was better. Felt like she was hitting, just like her control was a lot better. She wasn't being as impatient. So I did feel like, okay, like it would be nice to hold here to make it 5-2 and make Keys serve it out and for a 6-2 set, but she didn't manage to hold. She did play 2 good points from love 40, I remember, to get it to 30-40, and I thought, okay, like who knows here? But ultimately, I do feel like even when she was making her first serve in this set, she either was missing her spot or she was having to hit second serves where she didn't win a single point the whole set, and just kind of Keys was just playing with a lot of freedom at this point because you're up 5-love, 5-1 in a set, and you just feel like you can do no wrong right now. So it was one of those cases where Iga would have to try to wrestle some of it back and at least salvage a game or two there, and then hope for a better third, and that we did get at least.
We did, because whatever was happening with Iga's serve seemed to get fixed by the third set. I think this is probably a slight tangent, but I want to just touch on it.
I do think she served her best in the third, like the whole match. I do think her serve was the best in the third set.
And that's what we remember this match for, which is the third set. Absolutely, which we will get to. But yeah, I'm thinking about what we were saying about sort of Iga in this season and like these sets that kind of go AWOL a bit. It seems to me that although, yeah, going for too much is not a new thing for her. I think that's kind of when she plays in these matches where she goes for too much, it's a sign of like she's not feeling good or she's not feeling confident in her own, in one way or another. But it seems to like the window she has to reset is smaller than she would like because her opponents are often good enough to just suddenly gain some momentum and suddenly several games are gone. And this seemed to be the first case of that happening. Obviously, I'm not an expert. I'm not a pro. I wouldn't know how to fix that. But it does seem to be a pattern that we would see for the rest of the year.
I feel like it got better from about after the Rybakina win at RG up until the US Open. We started to see it less and less. And at that point, she was just playing with a lot more confidence and obviously winning Wimbledon, winning Cincinnati, all of that. And so Iga did have a really good year from basically RG until, winning Seoul. So
yeah.
And then I think after that also some burnout came into play, some potentially playing Seoul, Beijing, Wuhan, everything back to back to back. Maybe kind of caught up with her. We'll never know. And also she was working with things on Wim at this time. So as much as Wim was helping her improve her game on fast courts, I do think there were some moments where she was caught between the old version of herself and the new version of herself and not quite able to like blend everything together. And so that's why we saw a lot of like stubbornness from her at times, and then it just kind of when Keys was playing as well as she did, like just having that one dip, like even in the first game, it can just bleed over for 5, 6, 7 games. The good news for her is that she did get it back in time, and then the third set really could have gone either way. It was basically a coin flip.
Well, let's see if this fully realized new version of Iga Świątek arrives in 2026. But sticking with 2025, going back to this, yeah, she certainly reasserted whatever she needed to get back in this match. Because it started off with Keys serving, Keys, gets a tight hold, and it does feel like that intensity from both players ratchets up. But it's kind of same intensity but opposite pattern to the first set where they're holding serve. Like it's a tough fight, but they are holding serve. Because I don't think there were any real break chances until towards the end of the set. But if you guys look at that first sort of 6 games, that first half of the set up to about 3-all, this was where the match really came alive in terms of quality, in terms of these players really going for it with their best and holding serve in the process. And unless I'm misremembering something here, Vanch.
No, I mean they both served quite clutch. There was one break chance that Keys had to go up 3-1 in the third, but Iga just did a really nice job saving it, hitting a really good forehand, getting Keys off position, making Keys go for it down the line off, when she was way off court. So that was one I remember. And then in the very next game, Iga also had to save a break point to avoid going down 3-2. So 2-all, 30-40. She's serving, and she manages to save. But the intensity was really good from both. The level had picked up again. They were quite even. It seemed like one break in either direction. It felt like a break was more important for Keys, just to like kind of stamp that authority after winning the second set 6-1, to just to build more of a cushion. But I don't think it really, I mean, in terms of quality, it started to peak again with both playing their best at the same time for like the first 6-7 games up until 4-3, with Keys holding for 4-3. Now is when the tension was building and the pressure was ratcheting up for both players.
Yeah. But then as the tension rose, so did the drama. And which was really and that is we're getting to the section of the match that's really going to be remembered for. Because you're right, yeah, with some clutch serving from both. And again, this set, both of them deserved it. Like Keys had chances early on, and then
they both had one. They both had one break point each, and they both saved it brilliantly. So at this point, there was nothing separating them for the first 7 games.
Yeah, and then so let's talk about 4-3, and now we are at Świątek serving at 4-3.
Yeah,
and that was. Did you have to save break point again for this?
Yeah, so this is the game. This is an important game because she's down 3-4. She's serving at 3-4, 15-40. So now this is where, for the first time, there's real jeopardy on her serve, and she's going to have to come up with something big here because if not, Keys will be serving for the match at 5-3. So
yeah,
this was the kind of first really big test for Iga in terms of huge pressure spot where she could actually lose this match.
Yeah, and I remember watching this back, thinking we were this close to it being a 6-3 deciding set, and this would have been nowhere near the match of the year.
Right.
Probably not. I mean, let's think. What was it in the end? Yeah, it probably would have been like one of the best matches of the year, but not up there with the ones that we're going to be talking about. Certainly not top 3 contender.
Yeah, I mean the 8th game until the rest of the match is really what the meat, where I would say like where everything is really.
But she does it, and like she clutches her way through those 2 points to save break points, get to deuce, get to game point, holds, and then it's Maddie's turn, and Maddie holds for 5-4. And I don't remember the specific points of this game, so tell me if there's any highlights from that 4-4 game where on Maddie's serve. But it's Maddie's celebration afterwards at 5-4 that she's like, I'm still at, like, where she's celebrating hard that she's still in this, that she did manage to hold, and she's still in maybe not as strong a position as she would have been at 5-3, but 5-4 still feels pretty good in the third set.
Yeah, it's no surprise that this was Keys' biggest celebration so far, because this was the game where you thought if she was going to get broken, it would be this, because you've just had 2 chances to break for 5-3, and Iga clutched her way out of that game. Actually, Keys didn't do much wrong on those 2 break points. It was Iga coming up with the goods. And so serving at 4-all, from love 40 down, Keys manages to hold. And there's 2 really big serves, one really big serve at love 40 and one really big serve at and then one serve and then this overhead smash that she just put a lot of spin on, a lot of side spin that just tailed away from Iga. So from there you're like, okay, that's too good. But the one point that Iga would want back is at 30-40, where she does such a good job of getting Keys off of position. She has a mid-court forehand, a forehand that normally she doesn't miss, that she's stepping in. This forehand landed in the service box. So if she goes down the line here and just hits a remotely safe shot, she's probably winning the point because Keys is so far off position. Maybe Keys gets a racket on it, and Iga then would have a really easy put away. But she misses this in the net, and she was disgusted with herself actually after that miss, because she knew this was the moment she could break. She could serve for this at 5-4 and potentially win. But this was the one break point I think, looking back, she might want back. Although, maybe it doesn't, maybe not, because as we will see later on in the set, she does actually get another chance. But yeah, at that point, I remember that game being huge because Maddie just saved 4 break points and from love 40, and then deuce, and Iga won another good point at deuce, got it to, add out, and then Keys just comes up with a really good serve down the tee. So I would say of those 4 break points, 3 pretty clutch points from Keys, and then 1 missed opportunity from Iga.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are we getting to the moment that still goes around social media of Madison Keys acing Iga Świątek, who kept her waiting, or did we get past that? Was that earlier in the third set?
That was earlier. That was the first game of the third when Iga just come back from the bathroom break, and she was doing her practice swings and kind of getting ready for, Keys. And Keys was ready. She was at the service line waiting. And obviously, this is one of those moments where people were really getting on Iga's case, and I was just more like, guys, she's just, it's just one of her ticks. Like she's just. She does this. She's just like, getting ready. I don't think it was any kind of gamesmanship on purpose, personally. but it was just, I think people found it funny because right afterwards she got aced, and yeah, I think I've seen those clips. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
first game of the third, but
yeah, if it was Rafa Nadal, you wouldn't be complaining. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that I didn't want to skim over that moment because obviously that is still a widely shared clip.
Yeah.
Iga taking a bathroom break after both sets. Interesting development. The second one probably should have been where, like, was probably made more sense than the first one.
Yeah, I think that's why I said, looking back, like the first time she took the bathroom break, I thought, well, like I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I was like, it really disrupted her momentum because the way she played the first 5 games of that second set, like, yeah, that was the worst tennis that anyone played in the whole match from these two. Like that was the one blip where it was like, oh, like if you were gonna make a case for maybe the final over this one, you would say like, oh, probably the first 5 games of the second set. You know,
but then my case, I would say the final had similar runs in it.
Yeah. So that's why. But the third set of this match and the first set of this match, I think were just better than anything we saw in the
this
final.
This match has 2 great sets. The final has 1 great set. I think that's probably the key difference here between these 2 matches as to why, in our opinion, the 2 people on your screen right now, this match is superior. But hey,
yes, and so many more deuce games, breakpoint saves, match point saves, and a final finish with a 10-point tiebreak with a comeback involved. Whereas that, you know, for the most part, it was just easy holds up until 5-all, 30-all. That's when Keys did her magic. But
yeah, which we will get to. So get to, and like you can watch the review of the Australian Open final that we've got out as well. But going back to sort of what I was saying, I know we've kind of jumped around a bit. We've got up to kind of late in the third set, so we'll get back to the match. But you know, apart from people sharing that clip to make a point, that ace actually was really significant to start the third set for Maddie, because her momentum could have been disrupted from getting that second set over the line. Okay, Iga was trying to build her own as well to a certain extent, but Maddie coming out and serving an ace like straight away, that kind of set her up to continue playing her best in this set, and that ended up being super critical for her mentality, regardless of what was going on down the other end. And kind of, you know, we talk about what Iga's done in her momentum. The way Maddie managed the match and her momentum was also really critical.
Yeah, it was. I mean, she could have been broken. Like she could have been broken at least once the first 3 or 4 service games, but you know, her serve was bailing her out. She continued her really good level. I think that's the one really impressive thing about Maddie throughout this whole match for me is her level never really dipped. Like she I would say had the more constant level throughout the whole match. Like she just never really, she brought it really from the first game onwards. And then it was just a matter of how was she gonna deal with the really big moments at the end of the first and the third. And the first went Iga's way, and the third we'll see. But I mean, it's like I think to hold for 5-4, that was a huge moment in the match right there.
Yeah, huge moment. And you know, you're right to ask, because you were talking about Maddie's history, and she wilted in that 2017 US Open final. Didn't exactly wilt against Sabalenka in 23 US Open semi-final, but you know, was outclutched. And so it's going to be interesting to see if she could outclutch this one. But certainly after seeing her level in this match and the final, for the first 3 months of the year, I was kind of saying, oh, have these mental changes that we talked about earlier in the podcast put her in the same category as Świątek and Sabalenka, and how long was she going to stay with them and be like one of the leading players? And I think she was that for the first 3 months, and then Indian Wells kind of squashed that with a semi-final up to that point, because getting to the semi-finals, like, it felt right. So let's go back to this match. Huge moment, as we've been saying. Holds for 5-4, saves 4 break points, massive celebration. The change ends. Iga comes out 4-5, and under pressure, holds and keeps herself in the match. I don't remember this hold being too dramatic, Vanch.
No, not so much, but she was down 15-30, so it was important to, you know, and then she wins the next 3 points. And, you know, nothing crazy, just standard Iga tennis, coming up with really good, you know, not going for winners, but just keeping the ball pretty deep, serving to good, nice targets. The kick serve was starting to work better again. In the second set, whenever she had to hit a kick serve on the ad side, she was getting it crushed. Like she was not able to find her way back in the rallies. But here, I feel like she did a much better job. Finally, got a lot more on her second serve. Was able to play more on the front foot behind the serve, which I think was lacking in the second set. So, this was a really good hold, and you felt like it could maybe carry her into the next game, which it did, because Iga really raised her level. I would say from 4-5, 15-30, the kind of tennis she played. I mean, basically until match point, she was looking really, really good, really, really strong. Like maybe only made 1 or 2 unforced errors in these 15 points.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the passage of match where probably the only part of the, I mean, other than maybe the middle part of the first set, where it felt like Iga was really in the ascendancy in the match. Talk us through how she breaks serve for 6-5.
Yeah, I think honestly it was similar to the game that she got, that she broke Keys in to win the first set, where it was just lockdown tennis, just refusal to miss, really, really good depth on her shots, knocking Keys off balance, and just playing a lot more, high, heavy, spinny shots and moving Keys around. Like when Keys is being forced to hit backhands down the line that she's not comfortable with, or forehands where she's way off the court, that's the position that Iga wants to be in, because she can either have a lot more open space for the next ball, or most likely she's going to win the point outright. And so 5-all, she breaks at 30. It's a really strong return, gets a miss from Keys, and and it was just an example of like just keep on putting pressure, slowly building the points in a way that it's more advantageous for her footwork and her court positioning. So 6-5. At this point, you're thinking, okay, she's serving this thing out probably, because she's looking really strong, and she was. I mean, basically up until match point. I mean, Keys' level was still pretty strong too, but 6-5, 40-30. I mean, this was the moment where, yeah.
This was the moment. Yeah, gets to 40-30 in that 6-5 game. Iga Świątek serving for the match, and that ends up being the only match point that she sees. Because, as you're saying, Keys' level didn't really go away. She was still pretty good. And a very well struck return right at Iga's toes.
And Iga made the first serve, by the way, too. So Iga makes the first serve on the match point.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Like we talk about match point saves. This has to go as a textbook definition of a match point save. I'm not sure Iga did a lot wrong with that serve. Maddie did everything right with that return to get it.
Yeah, I mean, it was decent pace. It was pretty good depth. It could have been maybe a little bit better located, but that's just me nitpicking right now. And obviously, it's match point, so you're going to be a little nervous. It's the first time that you're going to be in an Australian Open final. So, like for that moment, I would say the serve was pretty decent. You would have not expected the return to come back as strong as it did. Basically, knocked Iga back from the baseline, and she was having to hit. Yeah, she was basically having to hit an Agnieszka Radwanska style backhand, from her knees, basically. And she was having to do that in like a split second. So, no, it just totally rocked her back. And because at the worst case, I would have thought, okay, like, I think it was very important for Keys to run around and hit a forehand there, which she does end up doing, if I'm not mistaken. So she does have enough time to run around and hit a good forehand, but I didn't expect it to come in as fast and as strong and with as much depth as it did, because Iga was ready. She was ready to hit a good shot after the serve. But yeah, so at this point, I was just thinking, wow, what a return. Too good.
Yeah, what a return. And that changes everything. Because then, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Maddie then wins the next 2 points.
She does. And another really good return, this time off the backhand, where she connects really well. Short backswing. Again, Iga makes her first serve. This serve could have been a little bit better. I would say this serve more than the match point. This was kind of right in the pocket, but still, it went to Keys' backhand, so I didn't hate it. So I was like, okay, at least it's to her slightly weaker wing, where I thought, okay, yeah, it was still a decent-ish serve. She got it in, but Keys just hit that forehand. She hit that backhand inside-out return pretty well, and just got Iga moving, and it created another forced error.
Was this the setup break point, or was this on the break point?
This was to set up the break point, and
Okay.
yeah, this is where I think Iga felt the most pressure now, because she definitely thought she had the match in the bag at this point.
And then how did the break point go? I can't remember.
Double fault.
Oh,
Double
yes.
fault, break point down.
That was it. I always
So
don't know why. I always think of Iga double faulting on match point, but you're right. It's break point.
it was break point. And
Um,
so that's how it went. Yeah, strong return, made 2 first serves, and then a double fault.
Yeah. And that's probably where Iga was. I would say that's where Iga lost the match, because I can't think of anything massively wrong that she does in the tiebreak.
Yeah, I would say
So
in the tiebreak, she was always one step ahead of Keys. Like there was not a single moment that Keys had a lead in the first 12 points. Or sorry,
Yeah.
actually, let me rephrase. In the first 15 points, really.
yeah, 8-7. Like Iga ahead by a mini break 3 times?
She was 3 separate times. 3-1, 4-2, and then 7-5.
Yeah.
So 7-5. But I gotta say 7-5. Then they switch ends. Keys comes up with a clutch ace. So you're thinking, okay, 7-6. Let's see if Iga can stretch this to 9-6, because if she can, then probably she still got this. But she only wins one of those 2 points, because then Keys. I think the 7-6 she misses a forehand that I would definitely say is an unforced error. Iga, because at this moment this is slightly similar-ish to the forehand that she missed at 4-all. This is where I think she got a little bit tentative, Iga, on her forehand wing in the tiebreak. Is she didn't quite keep up that same level of I don't know if it was like acceleration on the swing or just more or less. She basically felt tight. Her arm was tight at 7-6 when she missed this forehand. She netted this one, and it was very similar to the one she missed at 4-all to get that break. And I said at the time that was big, but at the same time she still broke for 6-5. She still had a match point on her serve, so I can't really say that's what costed her the match. But this one at 7-6 was that's when I started to think like, oh, okay, like actually this match is very, very much still up for grabs. Because 7-5, 7-all, it felt different at this point. And then of course 7-all, we get to one of the points of the match, maybe the point of the match, I would say.
This is the point I remember. The point, like, and Iga's been like doing some nice volleys early on in the match, but I kind of gone away a bit. But we were seeing a little bit more variety from her kind of early part of the season. And yeah, she comes into net, kind of puts the drop shot kind of wide. Keys is there, accelerates the shot right at Iga, who manages to improvise a volley past Keys on the same side of the court and get it where it needs to. And that was an excellent bit of improvisation from Iga. And actually, I thought what at the time, and almost thought watching it back, even though I knew the result, in any other match, that would be the momentum sealing shot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because still, even though she had lost her mini break, to play that kind of a point at 7-all was very, it showed a lot of guts, because she came up with a very strong first serve. Madison barely gets the return over the net, has to let go of her left hand and basically hits like kind of a chip return. And Iga comes forward, hits a strong backhand, does well with this volley, but Keys shows really good athleticism, really good speed actually to track this one down. And comes up with a good forehand flick angle, but then Iga's ready for it, and actually you're thinking, okay, go to the open court, but actually she hits it cross court, and it's good enough for a winner. It was it was the point that I always remember from this match. Like actually, that whole sequence, because even though it was only a 6-shot rally, it was one of those ones that you still thought, okay, like 8-7 up. What does Keys come up with? Like she needed to come up with something really brilliant now to come back and win this match.
And she really does, because these are the 2 points that really set Madison Keys up to win the match. Aside from the break point return, the match point return at 6-5, which I think was the most important point she played the whole match. These next 2 were the second and the third. 2 excellent serves, clutch, finds it when she needs it to set herself up with match point at 9-8.
Yeah, I believe it was an ace out wide at 7-8, and then a really good serve out wide at 8-all. Both brilliant.
Yeah, so good from Madison Keys there. So we get to it. Another match point, this time for Madison Keys at 9-8 in this final set tiebreak. we'd had a match point save, maybe, and there was a possibility of like me going, right, so if Iga saves this, then it feels like really the match is, this is properly like both people deserve the match when you both save match point. And Świątek, it's on her serve. Good serve could help her out. And what you get is a relatively long, and I'd say comparatively, compared to the rest of the match, tentative rally.
I would say so, and I would also say the serve here was a good serve. It was a better. I think actually looking back, it was a slightly better serve than the match point that she had at 6-5, because at this point the return, while it was really good, Keys was still having to do more to run around and hit a good forehand here than she was at 6-5, 40-30. So Keys hits a good return, but then Iga does really well to fend it off, like a really, really good backhand in the crouch position. She has the rally where she wants and actually gets a shorter forehand this time. Somewhat, it's going to be an inside-out forehand that she'll go for, and she's just going to hit it long. And it's going to, and I think this was the one thing maybe that Iga in the tiebreak, the forehand did let her down on a couple of occasions. The 7-6 point, and I would say this point. But at this point, I think it was just, Keys, you got to hand it to her for the 2 points she played before.
Yeah.
Because, 7-8 after Iga wins the point of the match to come up with the 2 serves that she did. At this point, it was going to be tough for Iga to, respond as clinically. And normally you'd expect her to make that forehand. But in this kind of a situation, when you've just had those chances and you've let it go, you've not been able to win it. It must have been really hard mentally. So for Keys, there was so many clutch moments, I guess, in this match, right? The 4-all, the hold, saving 4 break points there. Obviously, the 3 points she played in a row at 6-5, 40-30, and then the final 3 points of the match. So kind of at the very end, she managed to play her best tennis.
And that's the thing. So Madison Keys won this match 5-7, 6-1, 7-6, 10-8 in the tiebreak.
Yeah.
And I think in summary, how she won it, great level all the way through, found her best tennis in the tightest moments, and applied pressure at the perfect times on one of the best players in the world who, let's face it, was at her, you could say, was as close to her best as you could get.
Yeah. I mean, this is certainly the best tennis we've seen from Iga in January in her entire career. Definitely better than 2022, when she was just outplayed by Collins, and that was her first major semifinal outside of RG. So, you look at the month of January for Iga, and you're like, that was a pretty high level. So for Keys, for it to be stopped by Madison Keys at that time was a really big deal. Like at that time, it just felt like, wow, like a total breakthrough win for Madison.
Yeah, which she capitalizes on in the final and completely changes the outcome, the outlook of this match, because it suddenly stops being about, Iga surprise loss, whatever, to, Maddie really was the player of the tournament. And she really was. But I think, here's a question. Would you say Maddie's level, semi-final and final, higher in the semi-final, higher in the final, about the same?
It's tough to say because I do think all the way through, she had the fewest dips in this match. Like, because if I just look at it, like, even the tennis that she played, like, I would say the only time she lost 4 games in a row was from 2-1 up in the first set. From 2-1 in a breakup, she went down 2-5, 30, 40. But I would say that was just more to do with Iga, than her. And then she got it back to 5-all, and that was more to do with her than Iga. So, and she maintained her level, if not picked it up in the second set, whereas Iga's dropped hers. Whereas in the final, it was more just one break of serve for Arena in the second set, really. And then all the way through, she played her best tennis. I think it's tough to. I think what makes this a good question is the level of tennis that Madison Keys found at 5-all, 30-all with that one of the shots of the year, to then break and win the title in the final. That's ultimately what people remember the most. But I think having to go through the drama and the ups and downs of being down love 40, being down match point, coming back and winning the tiebreak the way she did, I mean, she couldn't have gotten there without this. And I just think contrast of styles-wise and opponents-wise, because Arena and Madison play very similarly, it was always going to come down to who executes on the day. Whereas in this one, I just felt like, I mean, like Iga has more of like a matchup advantage, I would say, slightly going in at least, and just the form that Iga was in. So for me, I mean, yeah, that's why I had this one number one, basically, just because this was even more surprising. She
Yeah.
managed to win this.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, the way she managed to break. Yeah, you're right. Bring it out the bag, clutch her way to.
And let's face it, like Iga Świątek has won so many tight matches where, and you know, since 2023 Beijing and up until this point, like the Madrid match in 2024, the like all those wins that she had up until winning Roland Garros, and this is not a player who normally loses from a set up. She'd never lost from match point up in her life before this match, in any match. So,
and regardless of how we would assess Iga Świątek's year, hasn't lost a match like this since.
Yeah, and obviously this loss was a setback for her in the sense it was tough for her to gain. It was tough. The next 3 months would be pretty tough for her after this match.
I mean, we've heard some bits and pieces about the year. I think there's just a lot of stuff happened to Iga this year that just happened to happen all back to back to back. Do you see this result as having a big impact on her year?
I think it definitely played a role in the first 3 or 4 months. I mean, obviously it was a combination of her just getting used to the Wim facet thing, you know, getting used to that because this was still very early on in their partnership. And then obviously coming back from, you know, all the questions about the doping case and losing the number one. So it was a combination of losing the number one ranking, the doping case, the tough loss here, and the new coaching change. So it was like 4 things all at once, you know, and and also number 5, having to defend all those points from a really, really strong 2024 first half. So it's like you combine all those 5 things, and that's why you saw what you saw from Iga from February through May, basically. Yeah. It was still reaching quarterfinals and semifinals. You know, it was not like, it was like for most players, that's a win. But for Iga, since we're grading her on a curve, it was a disappointment. But for most players, anyone else would be happy with that. It's just because the bar is so much higher for Iga.
Yeah, I think it was one of the most overhyped storylines of the year of Iga's quotes struggles, because her results were still pretty good. She just wasn't winning titles. And it was
the stat that kept coming up is, oh wow, she hasn't made a final since Roland Garros last year. Oh wow, she hasn't won a title. But I knew at some point that was probably going to change. It was, I guess the one where you really feared was like when she lost at Rome to Danielle Collins. That's when you thought like, okay, this was an earlier than usual loss. You know, that was a 3rd round, or it was the 2nd match that she played in a tournament in a venue that she's normally dominated in. So that was the first time where I was like, oh wow, like actually, yeah, like Roland Garros is going to be really tough. Also because she dropped to about 8 in the world at that point. Yeah. So you were like, wow, you could play Coco Arena in the quarters, and that would be really hard. And obviously her draw was tough, but she managed to, even though she didn't win Roland Garros, you know, she managed to play her way into form there, which ended up being big later on.
Going back to this moment, I want to throw a hypothetical out there. Say Iga converts that match point, which no guarantee. And like, sorry, I'm going to do a tangent here. What you talked about, like Iga missing that opportunity to break for, break Keys for 5-4. No guarantee she would have held serve the next match game. Yeah. The same thing could have happened. I think probably would have happened given similar kind of circumstances how she did end up breaking in the 5-all game. But let's say Iga gets that match point. We were 1 point away from the Sabalenka-Świątek Grand Slam final we've been waiting for ages. How do you think that final would have played out had we got it?
Yeah, I think it would have been very, very tight. It would have been something similar to the final that we got, I would say, because you know, at this point, yeah, like most of the Iga and Arena matches where they were both playing their best, you get something like Madrid 2024, or you'd get. My feeling was though that throughout the tournament, up until the semifinals, Iga was the stronger of the two. And obviously they're playing different players and etc. and all that, but the level that Iga was bringing in match out was a little higher to me. But then we saw Sabalenka play the semifinal against Badosa the match before, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is the best match I've seen from Arena this year. Let's see how Iga kind of follows it up. And so no, it would have been a very interesting final. Maybe just maybe I would have slightly gone with Iga in the final just because she's so good in finals. And she hadn't lost a major final up until that point. And there would have been pressure on Arena to win 3 in a row. And we know generally in that head-to-head up until that point, it was 8-4 in favor of Iga. And, you know, she has been a little more clutch throughout her career than Arena has. And the level she was playing was very high. So all those things did make it seem like she had a legit shot at winning the title.
If anyone's going to beat Iga Świątek in a Grand Slam final, it's probably going to be Arina Sabalenka. She is now the person who beat Iga at Roland Garros, ended that Roland Garros run.
And this was also the second time that we were 1 point away from a major final between them, right? Because obviously in 2023, you had Karolina Muchova come back from 5-2 at match point down. And then we had a Muchova and Iga final. And that was also a very good match, which Iga ends up winning 6-4 in the third. But
yeah, very similar kind of tournaments, RG 23 and Australian Open 24, 25. Yeah, with kind of these outcomes, these kind of parallels. The only difference being the underdog did win the final after and took the chance in the case of Madison. I agree with you. I think Iga was playing the better throughout the whole tournament. I think she was the one who pushed Madison more than Arena did in the final. I think if you look at how Arena handled the final, I think she would have been playing catch up to Iga throughout. I think it would have still gone 3, but I think Iga Świątek would have won the Australian Open had she beaten Madison Keys. But then that would have made the rest of the year very odd in that she probably still would have struggled the rest of the year, potentially, or with all these elements in play. Maybe a little bit more confidence behind her. So maybe she might not have lost as much, but I don't think she would have been this.
Yeah, definitely the discussion around her would have been different, right? Like maybe those losses would be excused more by the public because it would have been like, oh, well, at least she won Australian Open. You know? And now she still has her favorite major coming up. And so she can still right the ship there. And you still weren't going to bet out on her not winning RG just because of her track record.
Exactly. And then I think Arena probably would have got her revenge at RG. Like that would have been a revenge semi-final, most likely.
Yeah, and it's also a shame the third set of that match ended. I mean, the way it did. Obviously, Arena was awesome, but Iga just kind of hit a wall in that third set because the first 2 sets of that match were phenomenal level from both. Like if they had continued playing at that pace, we would have gotten another Madrid 2024 final type situation.
And that would have been the match of the year, hands down.
So, but that's the one thing we need, I think, in women's tennis. I'm going to say we need in the sense we really. We're missing, they're not being talked about the same way as Alcaraz and Sinner because there's so much more depth amongst the top players. So we don't see Arena and Iga play each other that often. We only saw them play once this year, and they're the 2 best players in the world. So I would love a slam final between them at some point, and that's what we're kind of waiting for.
We are waiting for that, it's true. But, we do have that depth. We do have that quality.
Yeah.
And that's why
that's what made this tournament so special is that you actually had players this year who beat both of them on the way to titles, right? Like you had Mira Andreeva beat both of them on the way to Indian Wells. You had Rybakina beat both of them on the way to the WTA finals. You had Ostapenko beat both of them on the way to Stuttgart, and then Keys. So 4 different players managed to beat both Iga and Arena in the same tournament. Just compare that to the men's side with Alcaraz and Sinner. It's just no, they're winning almost every event that they're entering. Yeah. They're both entering in together. So it's crazy.
And that's why you're guaranteed kind of great women's matches throughout the whole tournament. So I think this match play a huge part in that narrative throughout the year and showcasing the depth of the tour. Like when I'm on presenting WTA Weekly, I was like, right, so I tend to look at who the top players are. And I knew it was the established top 4 of Iga, Arena, Coco, Elena. And then am I throwing Maddie into the mix? Am I throwing Mira into the mix? And then now we've got Amanda Anisimova joining in now as emerged towards the end of the year. So in the second half, Wimbledon onwards. Keys winning this was the first part of showcasing that you could have a great Grand Slam final between any of the top 8, eventual top 8 that we've got in the WTA finals in the world. And great matches involved semi-final. This set up the year of there are going to be so many great storylines. And Madison Keys was the first and probably still is my favorite from the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, it was just going to be so hard to follow up something like the Australian Open because right off the bat, you had this amazing run of Cinderella story, but also one that I think really resonated with everyone. like in the sense the emotions people felt after this match, of like of Keys winning her first major, of like what a great story it was in terms of like dealing with disappointment, frustration, bouncing back, and all the things that she said, I think afterwards very openly about how she got help and how she worked towards this mentally, and how letting go was a big part of that. And I think all of those narratives were just played into the phenomenal year that we had on the WTA, where we did have like those 25 matches and we had to narrow it down to those two or three. Even though this was, in my opinion, the match of the year, it wasn't like an easy shoe-in, because there were so many great matches. But I think this is the one that really stands out. Like, if you're gonna give me a match that's like says, define me the greatest moment of Madison Keys' career, I'd probably choose this one. So this, yeah, in my opinion, is just it was so much fun doing a recap of it, because even just reliving it and just like remembering what I was feeling at the time, it was like anyone watching that third set was just on their edge of the seat all the way through. Like, it just had so much tension, so much drama. Yeah, it really, like, I think that third set really just had it all. It was, yeah.
I think we can definitely say this was the best third set of the year.
Yeah, I mean, like, even in terms of length, it must have been like 80 minutes long, and the kind of tennis they were both playing when their back was against the wall, it was pretty special. Yeah.
I think if you want to hear more of us talking about the Madison Keys side of things, like, I want to end on the winner, but I think if you haven't already, go and watch our review of the Australian Open final between Aryna Sabalenka and Madison Keys. You know the outcome. We've mentioned it several times, but I think that is probably where we'll be dwelling on the outcome of that match and the impact on Keys, and reviewing her season after that point in real depth. But this is where Keys hit the real crest of the wave and continued to ride it to that Australian Open title. But this match was the start of it, and this match was the high point of the year in so many ways. Van, thanks for reliving it with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such a blast, and hope people enjoy it.
I hope you all enjoy it as well. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think of this match and how you think it affected sort of the season from this point for either player or for the whole tour. If you're enjoying this content, please like, please subscribe. This is going to be part of our Match of the Year series for both the men's and the women's. So you'll be seeing us reliving, as I said, the Australian Open women's final. There will also be another match, the Wimbledon semi-final between Sabalenka and Anisimova, you can relive. And you can also relive the best matches of the men's tour, which I will leave as a surprise. But it's fairly safe to assume that we're going to be including the Roland Garros final. So if you want to relive that with us, stick around. But I'll leave you to it. If you don't want to watch any of those, if you just want to follow us into 2026 and enjoy the tennis with us, we'd love to have you along for the ride. We'll see you then. Take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.